Night to order, but real quick, people that are wearing masks, we're going to ask that you go on my right, would be your left side of the room. If you don't want to wear a mask, you're in the right spot. Appreciate it. There's also an overflow room just outside, and it's the room if you're facing the dais on the left. There's a television in there. There's a lot more free space. When we do public comment and public questions, I'll take my time if you want to go in the other room and come back and come in here and ask questions and pop back and forth, but either way, we have a lot of options. We want to accommodate everyone and make sure you feel safe. So with that said, we're going to call the meeting to order, and Mr. Warner.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The Open Public Meeting announcement: adequate notice of this meeting has been given in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-6 on January 13, 2021. Proper notice was sent to the Courier News and the Star Ledger and filed with the Clerk of the Township of Bridgewater and posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building. Please be aware of the Zoning Board of Adjustment policy for public hearings. No new applications will be heard after 10:15 p.m. and no new testimony will be taken after 10:30 p.m.
Thank you. If you're able, please rise to the salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Hi, Susanna. Can we get a roll call, please?
Chairman Mr. Foos,
Here.
Mr. Wydeli,
Here.
Mr. Falone,
Here.
Mr. Sweeney,
Here.
Ms. Gutschall,
Here.
Ms. Amin,
Here.
Mr. Fresco,
Here.
Mr. Laspiza,
Here.
Mr. Roble, Mr. Bongiorno,
Here.
Mr. Gajewski,
Here.
Board Attorney Mr. Warner,
Here.
Board Engineer Mr. Burr,
Here.
and Board Planner Ms. Doyle.
Great. Thank you very much. We're going to do our minutes. First up, let's do April 20th, 2021. And right off the bat on page 1, referring to who was present, when we flip to page 2, under approvals, number 5, we have abstain, Mr. Roble and Mr. Bongiorno, and I believe they should be under absent. And that same condition exists under number 6 with the absent and abstained.
So they wouldn't have been able to vote anyway.
Should we put them in there as absent, though?
It's up to you guys. You'd rather keep it under absent?
Well, they technically can't abstain if they're not here, so technically they'd be absent, yeah.
All right, and that repeats on page 3 as well. Any other changes? All right, can I get a motion to approve, please?
I move.
Mr. Wydeli, a second.
I'll second.
Mrs. Amin? Susanna, roll call, please.
Chairman Mr. Foos,
Yes?
Mr. Wydeli,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
Ms. Amin,
Yes.
Mr. Fresco,
Yes.
and Mr. Laspiza.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to May 4th, 2021, comments and changes, please. Could I get a motion to approve, please?
I move.
Mr. Wydeli, a second.
I'll second.
Mr. Falone. Susanna, roll call?
Chairman Mr. Foos,
Yes.
Mr. Wydeli,
Yes.
Mr. Falone,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
Ms. Gutschall,
Yes.
Ms. Amin,
Yes.
Mr. Fresco,
Yes.
and Mr. Bongiorno.
Yes. All right, number 6, resolutions. On the Conifer resolution, we have, we're awaiting an escrow payment, so that's not going to happen tonight. And on Volta, I believe we've heard from their counsel that they've requested some more time. Is that correct, Steve?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Counsel for the applicant has the resolution, and the applicant's professionals wish to have more time to review it and see if they have any comments, so they've asked us to carry it to the next meeting if we would.
Number 7, we're going to open the meeting up to members of the public that would like to discuss anything not on tonight's agenda. You can please approach the podium. Okay, seeing none, we're going to move forward. That's going to take us to GCP Bridgewater, 530 Route 22.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, while the applicant's counsel and professionals are approaching, with your permission, I did have an opportunity to review the notice, found the content to be sufficient, found it to be timely served, certified mail July 22, published July 22 as well, both at least 10 days prior to this evening, so the board does have jurisdiction to hear this case this evening.
Chairman, members of the board, Peter Lanford of the firm of Boris Golden and Foley, appearing on behalf of the applicant. This is an application for a use variance to convert the existing hotel located on Block 400, Lot 7, street address 530, Route 22, 2 apartments. This evening, I had intended to present 3 witnesses in support of this application. I do have a representative of the applicant, I have a planner, and I have a commercial real estate broker who specializes in the hospitality industry. However, since I received a report from Ms. Doyle dated July 29th, which is only a few days ago, which raised some questions about parking, which I will have to address and I'm not able to address tonight. I would like to at least proceed with my first witness, present that testimony, and perhaps based on some of the questioning of the board members, I can get a better sense of where I have to go with respect to the issue of parking. Also, by way of history, this facility was approved by this zoning board in 1995. Prior thereto, there was a rather seedy hotel on the site. The applicant at that time came in before this board to obtain a use variance to construct the hotel. The reason they needed a use variance was the FAR ratio. And this board approved that hotel in 1995. I think the final resolution was in 1996, and it was built shortly thereafter. When it was originally constructed, it was constructed under the flag of Summerfield Suites Hotel. Now it is not, it's under a different flag. But the buildings essentially are the same that were approved back in 1995. With that preface, I would like to call as my first witness Mr. Sylvester.
And I'll swear him in. I'll also swear in our board professionals. So if all 3 of you will raise your right hand. Mr. Sylvester, okay. Do all 3 of you swear to God or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Sylvester, you are one of the owners of the property that is the subject of this application?
I'm sorry, full name and address, business address is fine for the record.
Derek Sylvester. My business address is 150 Stratford Avenue in Wayne, Pennsylvania.
See, when you've been away from in-person meetings, sometimes things like this get away from you.
That's okay.
At least you don't have to unmute yourself every time.
That's right. That's right.
Most of the time, they want me muted. Mr. Sylvester, you are one of the owners of the property which is the subject of this application.
That's correct.
And when did your company purchase the property?
In December of 2018.
And can you tell the board your experience in the hotel industry? How long have you been involved in the hotel business?
I've been in the hotel business for 35 years. I was a graduate of Cornell University, did a hotel school program. I worked for Marriott and a number of consulting groups, and then joined Gulf Creek in 2005 as a principal.
And during your 35 years, how many hotels have you either owned and or managed?
Roughly 50.
And how many hotels that you've either owned or managed have been extended stay hotels?
Roughly 10.
Now, when you purchased this hotel in 2018, what was the flag? Was it a Hyatt at that time?
It was a Hyatt house, yes.
Okay. Do you know when it changed from Hyatt, from Summerfield to Hyatt, approximately?
No, I don't.
Okay. And as I indicated in my opening, there are 128 rooms in the hotel.
128 suites, yes.
All right. Can you basically describe the hotel to the board?
It's a series of 5 buildings that each house roughly 15 rooms. And there's a gatehouse there. It's a 3-story building with walk-up stairways, all exterior entrances. And then we have a main lodge at the front of the complex, or front of the piece of land, that has 8 rooms and houses our bar, our restaurant, our breakfast buffet, guest laundry, a meeting room, fitness center, our own in-house laundry, and our front desk.
And are there any other amenities on the site?
We have an outdoor pool with an outdoor jacuzzi. We have a fire pit. We have an outdoor basketball court, and we have a barbecue area with grills set up for guests to do their own grilling.
Okay. Now, after you purchased the property, did you do anything to improve or upgrade the property?
We bought the property in 2018 and immediately did an exterior renovation. We cleaned up the pool, bought new furniture, cleaned up the basketball court. Basically, the property was owned by a large institution, and they there's a fair amount of deferred maintenance on the property, so we did, in that first 6 months, did a lot of cleanup. And then in the second year, 2019 going into 2020, we did a major guest room renovation. We replaced all the case goods, carpeting, wall vinyl, soft goods. We redid the whole front lobby with a new bar and and seating. So a pretty significant renovation in 2020.
Okay. After doing all of those renovations, also at that time, what was your occupancy rate?
The hotel ran about 73% occupancy in that first year.
Okay, and you had an opportunity to review the report of Ms. Doyle, where she referenced that, I guess, the assessor's office had indicated that there was a 90% occupancy rate for the hotel. Has there ever been a 90% occupancy rate since the time you've owned it?
No.
And generally, in the extended stay business, do you normally see 90% occupancy rates in any
No.
time? Okay. And would you consider 70% a good occupancy rate?
Yes, it's a reasonable occupancy rate, yeah.
Okay. Since the purchase, obviously, we've come upon the pandemic. What happened to the occupancy rate since the pandemic?
Well, it plummeted, as you probably know, starting in March. And March through April, we were able to keep the hotel open and sustained the operation of the building during that period. But we continue to have tough months all the way through, really today. So.
And what are your numbers approximately now of occupancy?
Year to date, we're running in the high 40% occupancy range, with a rate that's probably $30 average rate, which is about $30 to $40 lower than what we had anticipated.
And given your experience in the industry and given the changes in the world where people are doing Zoom meetings and remote meetings, do you envision the numbers coming back to the 70% rate?
We think we'll get back in 22 and 23, but I don't know that we'll ever get to that same level of occupancy or rate, frankly, that we were in when we bought the hotel in 18.
Okay. Now, in operating the hotel, you had indicated that there are a series of buildings, all of them with exterior access. What are the pitfalls or problems that you encountered in running or operating a hotel of that kind?
Well, the biggest challenge is that it's guests have to walk up 3 flights of stairs if they're staying in a room that's on the 3rd floor. Obviously, 2nd floor and then 1st floor. I think the 1st floor is sometimes guests feel somewhat uncomfortable that they're not secure, that there's not this interior corridor in a lobby that controls the access into that guest room. So it represents a problem with our guests. It also represents a problem with our employees who have to clean those rooms. That, as you can imagine, when it's snowing or raining and you're walking around, outside for the most part, it's a challenge, and it's a challenge to get up the stairs. So those are the 2 biggest challenges we face. And then it's an older building; it's a wooden structure, so it definitely takes a fair amount of TLC to keep it well maintained.
Okay. And is the setup of that hotel something that would be constructed today in the marketplace?
No.
What is the typical extended stay hotel in 2021 look like?
It's one building that houses typically anywhere from 4 to 5 stories, and on all the rooms are basically accessed through the main lobby, and they're all self-contained in one building.
And obviously, if it's a 4 or 5 story building, there would be elevators to service.
Yes, elevators. Yeah.
Now, you at some point in time made the decision that because of the pandemic, because of some of the operational issues, you wanted to apply to this board to change the use to apartments, correct?
That's correct.
And why do you feel that change as an operator is appropriate?
We during COVID, we had a fair amount of success with nonprofits and guests that are looking to stay in a more of an apartment style complex because of COVID. I think they felt comfortable that they were in a unit that was somewhat isolated from the public, and they could control access to that room. We deferred in most cases housekeeping. Housekeeping was on demand, and so oftentimes we weren't even going into these rooms. So I think guests felt safe and comfortable, and I think it was a good counter to the issues that some hotels faced around the pandemic.
Okay, now, the room count, you have 128 rooms on the site, is that correct?
That's correct.
And they are a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units?
That's correct.
Okay, and again, Ms. Doyle's report, and it's probably because of the information that was provided to her, talks about trios or 3 bedroom units. There are some rooms that have 3 beds, but there are only 2 bedrooms. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's one king bed and two double beds.
So there are no 3 bedroom units within the facility?
No.
Okay. And the units, can you generally describe them, the amenities contained therein and their size?
They're very spacious rooms for extended stay. They're roughly 860 square feet each. Those are the 2 bedrooms. The 2 bedrooms have 2 bedrooms and 2 baths. Have a common area with a pull-out sofa, so we can get a fair amount of occupancy there on a weekend. There's also a full kitchen with a real range and a real refrigerator, and cooking facilities for guests.
So, in essence, they can function today as apartments without any changes, renovations, and/or modifications?
Yes.
Okay. And the 1 bedrooms?
The 1 bedrooms are 1 king bed, a full bathroom, and then the full kitchenette with the sitting area, again, with the pull-out couch.
And if the board were to grant the variance, you would then rent them out as furnished with all of the current furnishings or new furnishings therein?
I hope so. We spent a fair amount of money just refurnishing all the rooms, so I think that's an asset, certainly an asset, yes.
So your target market would be somebody who was looking for a furnished apartment, correct?
That's correct.
Now, you're familiar with the ordinance in Bridgewater concerning extended stay facilities, and you're aware that there is a maximum occupancy for tenants of 89 days, correct?
That's correct.
And do you have certain tenants that stay 89 days and then need to stay longer?
We do.
And what do you have to tell those tenants if they,
We have to check them out and then check them back in again,
okay, so they would have to leave for a day
right?
and then come back in? And what percentage of occupants would you say are there on a more than an 89-day stay?
5 to 10%.
Okay. And has that been fairly constant since the time you owned the property?
Yes, it has.
Okay. Now, you talked about the lodge and the amenities contained therein. What's in there right now?
We have a full laundry room, I guess, for our a commercial laundry. We have a front desk area with a safe and offices for our administrative team. We have a front, and in front of the front desk. Then we have a half kitchen where we create breakfast, and then we have a breakfast area. We have a full bar with a sitting area, a number of television sets. We have a business center. Then we have a fitness room, a meeting room of about 1,100 square feet, and a guest laundry. And then on the second floor, we have a smaller meeting room, about 400 square feet, with 8 guest rooms.
Now, obviously, if the board were to grant the variance, that lodge would not function in the same manner. First of all, if it turned into apartments, you wouldn't have a liquor license, correct? You wouldn't have a bar.
That's correct.
Do you have an idea of how that space would, in your mind, be repurposed for the use of the tenants?
I think we'd look to enlarge the fitness center because I think it's a very popular amenity. So we'd likely convert that meeting room into a fitness center. We would take the commercial laundry and likely try to expand that to make sure that it was a larger guest room, guest laundry. We'd rip out the bar and perhaps put a pool table or something like that in there for guest entertainment.
Now, on the site at the present time, you have approximately 130 some parking spaces.
146, I believe, Peter.
146. Now, you're not there at the property every single day, are
No.
you? There on a fairly regular basis?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever seen the parking lot even prior to the pandemic when you were 70% occupied with the parking lot fully occupied?
No.
What, again, I'm sure you didn't count cars, but what would you generally guess is the percentage of occupancy during when you were in your peak?
Our occupancy would range from 60 to, there were nights when we'd sell out, so 100%.
Okay, and the parking lot would be 60% occupied at that time?
I'd say 60 to 80% occupied.
Okay. You also
'Cause
reviewed,
we have a shuttle, and a lot of guests will Uber in from the airport, and then we'll shuttle them to where they need to go, so they don't come with a car.
okay.
We have a fair amount of international travelers because of the pharmaceutical business, so they.
Okay, but those things will change if this turned
That's
into.
correct.
Now, you had an opportunity to review the report from Ms. Doyle, and I just want to go over some of the comments that she raised therein that apply to you. She referenced the conference suite.
Mr. Chairman, it's from Mrs. Doyle, yes, but also our engineer, Mr. Burr, put a lot of work in it as well.
I apologize, Ms. Doyle and Mr. Burr.
It's a joint memo.
A joint memo.
And just to confirm, July 29, 2021, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
So just to clarify certain things, there are no 3-bedroom apartments or units in that.
There are no 3-bedroom units.
Okay. And the conference suite was basically a unit, but it had a conference table if somebody was having a meeting.
That's correct.
And obviously, if it was changed, was that a 1 or a 2-bedroom apartment?
That's a 1-bedroom unit.
And if the variance would be granted, it wouldn't be a conference suite any longer. It would be just a 1-bedroom apartment.
That's correct.
Okay. And we talked about the occupancy rate. You mentioned that there is a pool, there's a spa, there's a basketball court and other exterior amenities. Is it your intent to keep those amenities?
Yes, and we do have room to add additional amenities if there's a playground necessary.
Okay, and those would be available to the tenants? It wouldn't be that they would be charged to use them?
No, it'd be amenities, I guess.
Okay. And Ms. Doyle and Mr. Burr also indicated that there may be a need for, if the board feels appropriate, playground equipment for young children. Do we have room to put that?
Yes, we do.
Okay. At the present time, there is a large sign in front of the property advertising the hotel. Obviously, if the variance were to be granted and it no longer was a hotel, would you have the need for that large sign?
I don't think so.
Okay, and probably a smaller monument sign just identifying the property would be appropriate.
That's correct.
I have no further questions of Mr. Sylvester.
Mr. Benfrey, can we get on the record Mr. Sylvester's company? Is it Gulf House Corporation?
Gulf Creek Hotels.
I'm sorry, okay, so, and it looks like you, from a legal standpoint, each hotel is created into an LLC?
Yes.
And it swallows up into an LP?
Yes.
Okay. Can you put your portfolio of other hotels on the record? Because I do think that's very important, what your company does, especially as it references your experience that you just put on the record. So if you could just go through really quick. I saw on your website, it's what, 15 properties?
We have 20 properties.
Okay. If you just go through them real quick. I hate to put you on the spot without
I'll
notes.
try. We have a Hampton Inn in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We have a Hilton Garden in Saratoga Springs, New York. And just so you know, we own 6 of the hotels, and the balance we operate as a third-party management company. So we have no ownership in the balance of those hotels.
So you own 6 and 14, you're a third-party property
Yes.
manager? Okay, or
With a third-party property manager, correct?
Okay.
Gotcha,
But we set up a same LLC, and the employees are owned by Gulf Creek. So
gotcha. And you're an employee of Gulf Creek?
yes.
Okay.
We have a 4 points in Boston, Massachusetts. We have a 4 points in Albany, New York. We have a Residence Inn in Middletown, New York. We have a Renaissance that we operate in Allentown, Pennsylvania. We have a Wyndham in York, Pennsylvania. We have a Fairfield Inn in Berwyn, Pennsylvania, a Home 2 Suites in Downingtown, Pennsylvania, a Residence Inn in Malvern, Pennsylvania, a Hilton Garden in Newtown, Pennsylvania, Newtown Square, Pennsylvania. We have a Best Western in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. We have a Homewood Suites in Newtown. We have a Hilton Garden Inn in Hamilton, New Jersey. We have a Homewood Suites in Hamilton, New Jersey. We have a Hampton Inn in Robbinsville, New Jersey. We have a Home 2 in Bordentown, New Jersey. We have a Hotel LBI down in Long Beach Island. We have a Holiday Inn in Manahawkin, New Jersey. And I think and the Bridgewater property.
And to reiterate, the Hyatt in Branchburg, 2.5 miles due west. You guys have no interest in that?
We have no interest in that
Okay.
property.
Was that hotel there when you purchased this Bridgewater property?
That hotel was built as a Sierra Suites,
Okay.
and it was purchased by Hyatt and converted to a Hyatt house at that point.
But it was a competing, ongoing business?
Correct,
When you
with a different
acquired
name.
your property in 2018?
2018, correct.
Thank you.
I actually have a question. You gave the square footage to the 2 bedrooms. The majority are 1 bedrooms. What's the square footage on the one?
560 square feet,
How many?
560,
So it's 560, and the other ones are 800.
860, yes.
Please.
You commented that in the 146 parking spaces, you'd never seen full, even at full occupancy, but for a residential property, probably you'd run it closer to 93 to 96% occupancy. You do really think that 146 parking spaces would be sufficient?
I'm not an expert in residential.
If I may, and Ms. Doyle, Mr. Burr pointed out that there are different standards for residential units versus hotels. We are aware of that, and that's one of the things we need to look at. We probably while I may disagree with her overall number, and I think some of her numbers are not 100% correct, I do believe we need to provide, if the board were to grant a variance, additional parking, and we, again, just got the report, but we have to look at that, and there may be a way to do that. And we'd probably have to talk to you about that, but there's no question that some additional parking would be appropriate and necessary, both statutorily and practically.
Go ahead, Steve.
I apologize for jumping in because it's board member questioning, but on that one note, if I may, is it your intention to provide any expert testimony with respect to parking deficiency, parking need, satisfaction of the deficiency, et cetera?
We will have to, yes. We don't have, again, we just received the report. We don't have that professional on board, but we will have to have somebody do an analysis and provide that information to this board.
Mr. Sylvester, you had commented when we were talking about occupancy rates that although it's now, what you said, like around high 40s?
Yes.
You expected it to improve in 2022 and 2023. What are you assuming about the market for apartments in those years? Just today, what's going to change, if anything?
Apartments or hotels?
Apartments. Because that's what you're talking about doing, right?
Right. But I believe it's my understanding the occupancy for apartments wasn't as impacted by the pandemic as the hotels.
I mean, it's my understanding that the Eviction Protection Act, I think is what it was called, was just terminated over the weekend. What's that going to do to the number of empty apartments in the area, and how's that going to affect you? Or how would that affect your proposed apartment buildings?
Well, our plan to convert to apartments is not likely to take place for at least another year. So at that point, the market may be different than it is today. And we would certainly evaluate the market to make sure that before we switched over to apartments that we felt like that was, the apartment market, if it's down, is certainly recovered.
So you're going to go ahead with your plan to develop apartments regardless of what happens to the market between now and the next year or so. I think that's what you just told.
No, I just said that we'll continue to operate as a hotel until we feel it's appropriate time to move to apartments and convert to apartments. But it will take us some time despite the fact that there are not a lot of things we need to do, but we anticipate at least a year before we.
Is this like an open-ended application where somewhere down the road you think you want to give up the hotel business and convert to apartments, but you're not going to tell us when because you don't know what the market's going to be like or how it's going to develop?
I'll let my attorney answer that question.
No, I don't think it's that at all, Mr. Sweeney. I think, quite frankly, this client, as opposed to some other clients, when they're at the end of the rope and are running into a board to seek some sort of a relief, Mr. Sylvester and his group saw where the market is going, and actually I have a couple more questions I want to ask him about that. But if the board were to grant the use variance, we would have to retrofit some of the common areas. We'd have to put a parking lot in. I mean, if the variance were to be granted this year, we're still probably about 18 months away before the conversion can take place, because there's work to be done. It's just not a matter of taking down the sign and just leasing the place out. We do have work to do, and which we would start to do immediately. But it's not a simple just take the brand off the pylon sign and just start signing leases. It does involve redoing the lodge, putting in new parking and things of that nature, which will take time.
So you're going to go ahead with this plan to convert the hotel into apartments. You don't know when it might happen. You don't know what the market's going to be like when it does happen, but you're going to do it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we would like the approval and the ability to do it. It's our game plan to do it within 2 years. It's like I said, it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, nobody anticipated in 2019 that there would be a pandemic. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen a year from now. But again, I have my client plus one of the other witnesses in the hospitality business who indicated that really, because of circumstances, the more appropriate and best use for this facility going forward would be apartments, and whether it's going to be in 12 months or 18 months or 2 years, but it will be apartments.
Let's then talk about apartments. Help me understand the size of the proposed apartments as they compare with what's out there in the market today. As we've done a market study looking at some of the other units in the market, what the comparable rates are. We've had some of our people take a look at kind of what the sample size is, and that they feel like the size of the one bedrooms, the size of the two bedrooms are appropriate for the market, and we've done pro formas based on the rents, the market rents that we would anticipate achieving as a one bedroom and two bedroom apartment. So we feel confident that there's demand for that. Are you going to present that information to us?
I do have some photographs that I think were included as part of our application that I could put into evidence, and I can hand them out this evening. I believe some of the...
I believe I have those photographs, Mr. Sylvester, but they really don't get at what I'm trying to get at.
we can...
How competitive will the proposed apartments be with what else is out there in the marketplace? And how is that going to affect occupancy rates for this apartment complex?
Maybe I can hop in there while you're creating a list of things you can get to us. How about a site plan? You're asking this board to grant you potentially 1, probably 3 D variances. Now, hear me out. We come here, we're volunteers, and basically we know that our most important job is to guide the D variance and to make sure that it's prudent when we grant it. I don't know how you can sit there and look at this board and say, parking will be better, don't worry about it, without a site plan. I can't possibly rule on this case without a site plan. And I'm just telling you that, just me personally, not as the chairman, but as a zoning board member of Bridgewater, you haven't supplied us a site plan.
Well, we supplied you a site plan of the existing site.
But you've already talked about doing revisions to the pool room, to the recreation facilities. Those are not reflected on your site plan. I'd like to see where you plan on putting these new parking spaces. I'd like to see where children might play. I'd like to see a lot of things that you're promising, and you're making a list. So on that list, I'd like to see a site plan.
I don't disagree with you at all. As I said, we just got the report less than a week ago, and I've been doing this for a lot of years, and my first reaction was, we're going to need a site plan.
And frankly, that's why I'm telling you this. Because your reputation does precede you, frankly, I'm shocked that we don't have a site plan.
Well, originally, we sort of felt that we may be able to get away, not get away, I think that's not the right word, but maybe that the parking that we had would be sufficient for the use. But based on the reports and based on, again, some additional analysis, we then realized we needed additional parking, and we will get you a site plan. But again, we're here. I didn't want to waste the night.
Understood.
I think some of the questions that the board members are asking are very relevant and important, and they give me the opportunity to gather that information so that when I come back, hopefully I can have all your answers.
If I may, Mr. Chairman? Please. And I think it's a good thing that the board, and you should continue, in my opinion, to get the guidance from the board on other issues. Not to belabor the site plan issue, because you agree that a site plan is required as applicant's counsel, but I just want to take a moment just for the benefit of the board members who know this, and the benefit of members of the public who may or may not, that it was at least initially appropriate for you to request Section 76B bifurcated application. That's something that is allowable. To bifurcate, by bifurcation, I mean bifurcating the D1 use variance from the site plan and asking, in essence, to do this as a two-phased approach, asking the board to ask for use variance relief initially, and then assuming arguendo it's granted, then to proceed to site plan, et cetera. However, I think we've arrived at the point where, due to parking issues and other issues, it may be the determination and acknowledgement that, as is recognized in the case law, that not all applications are suited and appropriate for bifurcated applications, and they require a consolidated or unitary application, particularly where the site plan issues are central to resolving problems associated with D variance relief, and where the variances in the site plan issues are highly interrelated, parking deficiency and some others. So I won't go so far as to state the cases. I know you know them. I know your planner knows them. But I think it's an appropriate recognition that this matter should proceed in a consolidated or unitary application as opposed to a bifurcated application. And along those lines, it may behoove the board, members of the public, and the applicant to focus on what variance relief, in addition to a D1 use variance and site plan approval, might be required, i.e., are there other D variances that are the subject matter of this application if it's going to be pursued as a unitary or consolidated application, and are there bulk variances in addition to the parking deficiency that was referenced, and exactly what might those D and C variances be?
And I'm aware of that, Mr. Warner. There was, as I indicated in my opening, a FAR variance that was granted in conjunction with the original application.
Do you acknowledge that an FAR variance would be required to be obtained again, and one cannot rely on an FAR variance that was previously granted for a completely different non-permitted use?
That is correct, so we would have to provide that information. Right now, we don't envision any bulk variances
Other than parking deficiency?
other than the parking deficiency. Again, if we have to now create parking, that may change, but as of now, we do not see any other bulk variances.
Well, let me ask you then, in light of the previously approved bulk variances that were approved in connection with a different non-permitted use, are you certain that you would not need to obtain any of those previously approved for a different use bulk deviations? I.e. minimum building front yard to Route 22, minimum parking setback to Route 22, minimum side yard,
I will have to
total combined side yard.
The initial resolution didn't reference them, but obviously I will have to review those in conjunction with the site plan, and if any additional variances are necessary, we will obviously have to note them and provide the appropriate proofs to support them.
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
If I could interrupt, I would feel, as planner, when I put all this on the chart, I would feel more comfortable rather than going to a meeting and having the applicant's attorney argue points. I would like him to prepare I won't say a brief, but certainly sufficient information for our attorney to come to the board and advise the board, yes, they need it, or no, they don't need it. And that can only be derived by Mr. Lanford giving our attorney all the documents and the back cases that would support that, so that it helps our attorney make a determination for it.
I agree, Ms. Doyle, and I just don't feel this board has enough information to help you, sir.
I think if you are asking us to submit a site plan, which you are, the site plan will contain a lot data table.
I am not asking you to do anything. This
No.
is your case, and I want to make it very clear. I'm
No,
putting no pressure on you. But if you
I
want this board to
understand.
render a judgment, I think you're going to have to provide
Yeah,
more
and,
information.
and as you have reviewed site plans in the past, the site plan will have a lot data table which will indicate all of the zone requirements as they currently exist in 2021 and whether we meet those zone requirements or whether we need variances for them. So we'll have that all set forth.
If I could, just to facilitate the process, I think what our planner was getting at, Ms. Doyle, was if you're not acknowledging that such relief is required to be obtained. If you are acknowledging the relief that is necessary, or taking the position that it's necessary as the applicant, and that's your right to do, then I don't know that I necessarily need support for the position that you require the variance. If you believe you require the variance, frankly, you know, that's something that you have to then ask for. But certainly if it's your position that any bulk variance relief is not required, despite the fact that this is a different non-permitted use, then candidly, I would need to see the support for that.
I'd like to find it myself.
Okay, well, okay. But in any event, I think that might help clarify things and facilitate the process, which is what we're all here to do. Ultimately, there'll be a determination, but the process needs to be done right, obviously. That's all I had at this point, Mr. Chairman.
No, thank you, Steve. So how would you like to proceed here? I mean, the one good thing for you is that this board is freed up dramatically. We don't have PSE&G doing their right-of-way transmission project. We don't have Tesla and some other big projects on the docket now. I'm sure we have plenty. Scarlett's giving me a look of lasers. But you know, we can accommodate you. It won't be till it won't be into next year. It'll be this year. We can hear this.
And to be honest with you, we have to now hire a traffic consultant. We have to hire a site engineer. It's going to take us a good 60 to 90 days to be
But with
set.
all due respect, you are on the side of Route 22 East, you know, in front of Ethicon, in front of a very busy thoroughfare. I think these things would be prudent and would help us make better decisions.
I concur. So, and we're not going to get it to you in 30 days. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it right.
But I want to give you the board's commitment that when the documents are prepared, we're going to hear the case.
Fine.
Okay.
What I think we can do, unless the board members have any other questions or concerns, which we'd gladly like
No, and
to hear.
I apologize. I cut Mr. Sweeney off.
I have a
And
question.
Mrs. Amin, yes.
At present, you have people who stay there, extended stay. On average, how long do they stay? Weeks, couple of weeks, or days, or?
If you took our overall guest stay, if you average it all out, it's 3 or 4 days.
3, 4 days, I see. Okay. You have, actually, there are 5 buildings on the site, including the guest house, right? So in the guest house, how many rooms do
6
you actually
buildings.
have?
There's 6 buildings,
There are 6.
yes.
Okay. Because then the count would be a little bit different. Okay. You also have conference room there in the guest house where people come for meetings, or what do you do?
Yeah, we have a 1,000 square foot meeting room in the guest house, on the first floor of the guest house.
So when those people come, they come from outside, or I'm asking this question because the parking lot might get filled with if you have people coming from outside for any meetings or those kind of things.
Sometimes it's, you know, the interesting thing about it is that there tend to be day meetings, so our guests will vacate the premises if they're not staying in the hotel. So parking is available, and then oftentimes it's the guests are staying in the hotel, so they're already parked there.
I see.
So we really haven't had an issue with it.
And if this were to be converted, we would be getting,
So when you
Using it.
convert it, those meeting rooms will not be there anymore?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, thanks.
I have a question for you. Now that we're talking site plan, I know, I don't have Bridgewater's ordinance in front of me, but lots of times apartments are minimally sized, 1 and 2 bedroom units. It sounds like your one-bedroom unit is 500 some odd square feet. Have you looked into whether you would meet the requirements if there is a minimum square footage in Bridgewater's apartment?
I don't believe there is, but I will look into it.
I've seen it before. Again, I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but I'm not sure if even we can answer that question here.
I actually have a question that maybe our attorney will clarify this. In one of the questioning that you said that you're not sure how long it will take. Now, once we approve an application, supposing you got the approval, then you have no more than a year to implement whatever you requested. So you cannot wait for a year and a half.
Well, if it's associated with a final major site plan approval, then it would be 2 years post the approval period to commence construction, which is generally more than merely soil borings or the like, but it doesn't need to be built within 2 years. So and there are extensions that can be afforded, as the board knows, for that period of time. So
if they got the use variance, let's say, change from hotel to apartments, then they have 2 years to move from the hotel usage to apartments? How does that
well,
work?
frankly, it's already constructed, so that's an interesting way. It's not, the construction's already been commenced, it's a conversion. So the use variance, if it were granted, would last indefinitely. It doesn't go away. Use variances don't expire per se, but generally one has to commence construction, or they'd have to commence the use within, make the conversion, if you will, within 2 years of the resolution being adopted, notwithstanding extensions that can be afforded by the board, consistent with the MLUL in our ordinance. So it could be several years beyond 2 years.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a few questions.
Please.
So, Mr. Sylvester, I'm trying to wrap my head around the fact that, is this a COVID thing, or is this a competition thing? Can you just comment on that?
I think we were going to address that whole issue with the planner, but let me just sort of take you
The
through.
owner, I mean, I would think.
Let me just take you through the life cycle of kind of our acquisition of the property. We bought it in 2018. We have we have a limited amount of time left on our Hyatt House franchise. We're not certain if they're going to renew that franchise, and so we bought the hotel. We feel like it was a good investment. It cash flows well, and then the concern was what happens on exit. And if we're able to renew with Hyatt, then we'll in all likelihood continue with Hyatt. If we don't, then we'll there's other brands out there that don't require the same level of finishes that Hyatt requires that we would then convert to. One of our challenges is that Hyatt is ultimately trying to get out of these types of hotels because for the reasons we've talked about earlier. So part of our concern was how long can we hold on to Hyatt, and then sort of what's the next play. And in our minds, clearly, the opportunity to convert to residential would be a strong play for that property.
Okay, so is it a COVID thing or is it a business thing?
I think it's a business. It's a business thing. I think
Not a COVID thing.
No. I mean, we anticipated that we would have a good year in 2020, and that we would be able to pay down debt and do all the things that we had intended to do. So it was unfortunate that our plans got set back roughly 18 to 24 months, but we're not converting because of COVID, no. And converted, and frankly, in the COVID period gave us an opportunity to see how the property does with guests that are looking to kind of stay longer term, because that was the market, was people that want an apartment for a period of time. We had a lot of people that just wanted to work in their apartment. They wanted to get out of the house, and they for various reasons. We had different couples in different situations, so it was an interesting kind of blend of business that we had not seen before.
Has the increase in hotels in Bridgewater affected you?
We don't know yet. There was a hotel that opened in January. The one over here, the AC, opened in January of 2020. So the impact of that, we had a soft kind of early January, February, March, and whether that was a product of kind of the AC opening up or not, we don't know.
Well, and there's another one I think down 22 on your Foothill Road that's been there probably certainly since 2018.
And we understand there's potentially 5 to 10 new hotels that are planned for this area, so that is a concern of ours.
You know, I was impressed with the fact you were able to list off your 20 properties, I have to say, so.
Thank you.
We definitely know you're working. But, you know, I didn't hear, in that portfolio, I didn't hear anything about apartments. So, would this be your first crack at managing? And part two of that is, if it is yes, I guess, or no, is it your intention to manage this throughout, or are you thinking potentially down the road to maybe offload this on somebody else?
It's quite possible we would partner with an outside group that's all they do is handle apartments. We've been,
No, you don't have any in the portfolio?
no.
And if I can just ask our township professionals, have we done this before? Have we taken a hotel and transitioned it into apartments? And I guess my real question is the timing of it. I mean, how long, I heard some comments that it's a year or 2 years. I mean, at what point do they say, all right, we're not taking, hotel guests and now we're going to start to market this as an apartment? So I don't know if you guys can enlighten.
We have not had this situation. The only time we've had any situations when we've had age-restricted housing that got converted to market rate, and that was a decision of the Congress, but of our legislature. But as far as this type of thing, no, we've not had that.
Have we ever rejected, or you just haven't?
We've not had any. And Mr. Chairman, I have a question as it relates to that, if I could.
Sure.
Because we have not had it, there are a lot of questions, one of which is you have a property that's got a use variance for the hotel. That's a use variance. Now, if this board considers granting it the conversion, the question would then be, is it going to be an incremental conversion where they're going to have 3 or 4 buildings converted and then they won't convert the others, and then we're in a situation of 2 types of variances? Or are they going to wholesale abandonment of the hotel at a certain point? None of the buildings would be hotel. I don't think from a business standpoint, well, I question it from a business standpoint. So my concern is that at one point in time, we may have hotels and apartments, and then they may say, I don't mind it. Let's try to keep what we got. And then where are we? Because as council said, it can be extended for years. So we could have a start of one building and then 5 years later or 2 years later have another building and another. We could be retiring and still not.
Maybe the applicant can answer whether the intention is to do a phased approach or not.
Or wholesale abandonment.
It would be a complete change of use. First of all, we have a franchise. We couldn't keep less than the units we have with the franchise. We'd lose the franchise. So if the board were to grant the variance, we would make the conversion to apartments. There would be no rentals. We would give up our liquor license. We would give up all of the other things that go to the extended stay facility.
What date would that be? I mean, you've got to re-up with Hyatt. When is that up? When is that?
Now, again, I think, Scarlett, now we have to figure out what kind of site improvements we have to do, what kind of site work will be necessary, and I think we can discuss that further when we come back, because until the board tells us, if we have to knock a building down to put in parking spaces, it may take a little bit longer than if we're just going to.
But you indicated that there was or at least I inferred that there was a date upon which your franchise had to be renewed. And I'm asking you, what is that date?
That's down the road. That's a long way down the road.
I see.
It's beyond 2025.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That's helpful.
We would terminate that.
We have the right to terminate it. So if the board were to grant the variance, we would then set about to do the site improvements and convert it.
Right. So, I mean, that's relevant to feasibility, so you answered that question, and the stipulation is that it would be a date certain.
Yes.
And it
Well,
would be a wholesale conversion, not a phased approach.
It would be a wholesale conversion. The previous use variance that would have been granted would go away, and then the new use variance would kick in.
Mr. Fresco.
That was all, thank you.
All right, thank you. Go on, please.
In the conference building or the lodge, there's some rooms. Are those suites also?
Yes. Yes, they are suites.
They're already suites?
Yes.
Okay. And would any of the units be affordable housing?
Entertain a discussion as to that also, and that's something we would consider providing.
I did have one other question. This one is one of the ones that you own in the portfolio?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, if your use variance, if this variance is approved, in regards to your renewal option, I'll call it, how quickly would the refusal on that be? Would you refuse it right away? Would you wait a little bit? What would be the?
Can you repeat that? I didn't hear the whole question.
Sorry, in regards to your, I'm going to say your option on renewal, if this use variance is granted, would you refuse that option right away? Would it be, or would you take some time? Or
Well,
what would be the?
We would then negotiate the termination of the franchise agreement with Hyatt, and then we would set about making the site improvements that would be required as approved by this board, which I don't know what they are as of today.
Do you know, what I'm trying to ask, do you know roughly the time frame of that negotiation or how long it would take? I don't, you don't. crystal ball.
60 to 90 days.
Okay.
If no other board member, no board members.
Yeah, if I could, I just want to go back to some of the testimony, make sure I understood what I was hearing there. It was in the mid to high 70s was the occupancy prior to COVID, right?
In the low 70s.
The low 70s.
70 to 73.
And to date, you're in the 40s?
High 40s, low 50s,
High
yes.
40s, low 50s. So you're only 20% below. And you expect to see the 70% occupancy to come back in the next 18 months or so? Is that?
Yes.
18 months?
But let me, just to add to that there's a product of, the hotel success is a product of two. One is how occupied your rooms are, and then what your average rate is.
Right.
So our average rate is down approximately $30 from where it was in 2019. So it's a combination of occupancy being down and average rate being down.
So this this use in this business no longer sustainable? Is that what you're saying? Or is
No.
it no longer as profitable?
It's just a 18, 24 month hiatus from normalcy, we think.
But you're back at, this is still a sustainable business, it's still profitable, but is
18 to 24 months.
in 18 to 24 months.
Where we're back to kind of where we were in 2019.
Okay. And that's about the same time frame. I think I heard you were saying it would take to convert these uses, to convert from a hotel to residential. It's about that same 18-month time.
About that same.
So within that time, so you're pretty much looking at that no matter what, whether you're converting or not, you just have potentially a higher profitability afterwards.
Correct.
As opposed to getting back to where you are. So this business and this use, if I'm hearing correctly, is still sustainable, and you're expecting it to be, should it, even if you didn't convert into residential.
Well, as I said earlier, Mr. Fresco asked what our long-term plan was, and again, it comes into kind of long-term what happens with Hyatt and whether that brand is sustainable. Hyatt is clearly an upper upscale brand, and the next brand would be more like a Wyndham brand or a Hawthorne brand that doesn't quite that name recognition, where we'd get a lower rate than we are, or a lower rate and potentially a lower occupancy than we are now.
But that was down, I think I heard that was.
That's down the road, yes.
Down the road still, right? Okay. That's it, thank you.
Did, I guess on a related note, have you pursued any other permitted uses for this particular site other than the previously approved hotel and extended hotel use that remains viable?
Ms. Doyle raised that in her report. Again, given the nature of the site, none of those uses would work because, again, there are 5 separate buildings with no elevators. You couldn't put an assisted living facility in there, and some of the other uses, and I will present testimony, would not really work because of the way the site is configured.
That would include medical, dental, and psychological medical suites?
Correct, because there's no elevators. So it just wouldn't work, but I'll present testimony to that effect.
Have you, other than asking this zoning board of adjustment for D1 use variance relief, have you pursued any other avenue for potentially obtaining the ability to utilize this site for the proposed multifamily residential use?
No.
I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
One more question. Are you looking to convert any of the other properties that you own into residential, or is this the only one?
This is the only one.
Thank you.
At this time, I'm going to open up to members of the public that have questions. Scarlett, I thought we would come back when we had the site plan, we would hit the points on the report.
Well, it's related to information that you may want to have submitted with the site plans, supplementary information, but I'll yield to the.
Let's get the members of the public here so we can get them home, and then let's get your stuff on the record, and then let's get our want list put together, and then we'll go from there. Sir.
I'm sorry, you're gonna, well, actually, I apologize, Mr. Chairman.
Come on down.
Yeah, and for all members of the public asking questions, we'll just first need your name and address.
Steve Jones. I live at 446 Hawk Road in Bridgewater, New Jersey.
I'm sorry, 446? I didn't hear you, 446?
446 Hawk, H-A-U-C-K Road, Bridgewater, New Jersey. I've been there for like over 35 years.
That's great. Hang on one second, please. And then this is for questions of the gentleman who just gave testimony based on his testimony. Okay.
That, and I have some other questions. This is the first time I ever been to zoning board in like
That's
35
fine.
years, and I thank everybody for volunteering to do this.
That's nice. Just real quick, I want to just give you 2 quick instructions that'll help other members also that they want to speak. We're just going to ask questions on the testimony. At the end, there'll be a place where members of the public can give comments for or against the application. So right now, we're just going to focus on questions of the testimony we heard from Mr. Sylvester.
I just have a question with the traffic.
Yeah.
Traffic, is there any traffic plan? Because I go across 22 at like 4 o'clock and there's tons of traffic, just getting across there. I mean, I feel like I live in a city now. Really, it takes me forever getting in. It's like, what about like emergency vehicles going by?
We did not do a traffic report, but based on what I indicated to the board, we are preparing a site plan and will provide a traffic study and a traffic analysis.
I just have one other question. I don't know if this is appropriate or not for the board. If this gentleman gets approval for here, what about any of these other hotels? They say, hey, next thing somebody else wants to become an apartment. We can have apartments all over Bridgewater.
Well,
that's my concern.
with the chair's permission, I'll try to answer that question.
Please.
Every application is separate and distinct. Nothing is precedential. Nothing is precedent. So can people ask for things? Yes, people can ask for things. As we all know, does that mean they will get that approval? No, it doesn't. They have to prove an entitlement to it. But this applicant does have the right to make the request of the board, and that's where we are.
No, I understand that. I'm just, from my viewpoint, I said, if this person can do it, what about somebody else?
That might be something you want to bring up during the public comment period when we swear you in, but it's understood.
Don't be sorry. No, it's great having you here.
No, it's critical. Not only are the volunteer board members a critical part of this process, but all of you are a critical part of this process. That's why it's such a wonderful process. That's why I love doing what I do. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry if I...
Don't be sorry, and please join us anytime, and
Thank you.
you got it.
Timothy Ring, 17 Lawton Road. And I apologize, I'm looking at your application, which is posted on the town website, so I'm looking at a small map on my phone. But I have a question about the room types. As I understand it, there's 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms. The 2 bedrooms have 3 beds in them. Is
10 of them have 3 beds, that's why Scarlett told us 3 bedrooms. But they're basically 2 bedrooms, 10 of those 2 bedroom apartments have 3 beds in the 2 bedrooms.
so, but they're the same square footage as the 2 bedrooms that have 1 bed in each bedroom.
I believe so. I think it's just a different configuration of the public space in the room.
Okay. So down the road, it could have any number of beds in those rooms because of the same square footage. They could have 2 queen beds or 1 if they're the same square footage, potentially.
Because some of them, the bedrooms are bigger and the living rooms are smaller. But the bedrooms are bigger, so they all
Okay.
can have 3 bedrooms.
All right. And those 10, are those what's identified on, and I apologize, this small map as trios?
Yes.
Okay. And then one quick question as it relates to your potential exit from Hyatt. Do you have an upcoming window, or is that a potential situation where you would have to negotiate LDs with them, or?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
So if this was approved,
Right.
hypothetically, just say it was approved today, you're going to terminate your franchise agreement with Hyatt. Does your existing franchise agreement provide a window for you to leave, or is this a situation where you would be negotiating liquid damages with Hyatt?
We would be the latter.
Negotiating.
Yes.
So potentially there could be additional costs depending upon how those negotiations go.
That's correct.
Which, I don't know if you're at liberty to say, but I mean, sometimes I've seen liquidated damages can be pretty significant.
Well, given that the balance of our term, it's based to a degree on the balance of our term, which is not a long term left.
Okay.
So if we were in the early stages, it'd be a lot more than it would be at this stage.
Okay. So I guess in your mind, you have what a maximum amount would be and have factored that into your model.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Good evening. I'm Kathy Franco, 766 Weemac Road. I had 2 questions, really. These apartments, are they rental, or are you looking to have, purchase condo?
Rentals.
Okay. And I know the question had been asked about COA or affordable housing. I was unclear as to what your stance was on that as far as participation, if the township needed that in order to meet our COA requirement.
I think our planner can address what the township's needs are. He's in the witness group, be calling later, and as I indicated to the board, that we would be willing to provide a certain percentage of those units for affordable, whether they be a present need or a future need.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I may follow up on that question, because did you mention a specific percentage that was proposed, or did you just say a percentage?
Tonight I said 8%, but we can be more specific.
Well, I mean, that is important. I mean, how do you want to handle that? I mean, it's at a certain point.
No, again, we're coming back, we will
Yeah.
make, and our planner will discuss that, yes.
Okay, very good. Ms. Doyle.
This is the part of whether or not the board wishes to have it on the wish list. There's been discussion of the tax assessor who says there's a 90% occupancy, the applicant coming up with the 73 and then like a 46%, but has not used that as a basis for the D-variance. However, there is, if the board is interested, now they've only owned this for 2 years, since 2018, and I don't even know when, so they've owned it during COVID. I mean, it's not a great snapshot in time, but we have a 3% room tax in town.
Occupancy tax.
For every single hotel. Right. Now, it may be interesting to know what the last 5 years are for the receipts from this particular site. how much, and then not to get the money aspect out of it, but to see if there's a trend. And of course, you would expect it in COVID anyway, so I don't know if I'm being awfully helpful. But it would tell whether there's, what the potential was and what the future is. But again, it's up to the board if you want them to provide that information.
Well, I personally would find that very good information. 3% occupancy tax. If we have an average rate that was charged, we could theoretically come up with a baseline over the last 5 years of what, a proxy of what was the true occupancy here. And we don't have to kind of pin 73, 74. We can actually see historical trends. I think that would be very helpful. And, I think it would be a good measurement against some of these other facts that have come out.
I'm suggesting a
We have it.
5-year period, which would be before COVID and during COVID, and we're really not out of COVID yet, but at least it'll give the board some information as to what the trends might be.
I think that would be very helpful. All right, sir. So on the wish list, I think you've heard what we need. You want to talk about our next dates, next steps?
Why don't we continue this without a definitive date, because if I'm applying for additional variances, I would have to renotice anyway. So, and until I start talking to a site engineer and a traffic consultant, I really can't say to you, I'll be ready in 60 days or 90 days. So I would ask that this matter be carried with us having to provide notice. I will also grant the board an extension of time within which to act through the end of the year, which hopefully we will be here long before then, but at least it protects that.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, there's not a problem with refiling an application and noticing, notwithstanding saying there is a problem with carrying to a date uncertain. We'll have to have a date certain, even if ultimately you are going to commence a new date, or else we're not carrying anything, because the MLUL, as you know, requires a date certain, time and place. So we can do both. In other words, you can give us a date certain. It could be a few months out for carrying it, so as not to lose the work that was done thus far.
Mr. Warner, the problem is that if we go he's got to come in for a site plan.
No, I know it's going to be a new
That's a
filing
new
and a new
notice.
notice. No, I understand it's going to require all that, but at least for now, we're either carrying to a date certain, or you're withdrawing the application. It has to be one or the other. There's no almost that the MLUL allows.
And I don't think we want to withdraw it because we don't hear it.
Well, no, but there's no rule no prohibition of doing both.
Why don't we carry it to whatever your first meeting is in October, and if we're ready by then, fine. If not, I will give you advance notice after the hearing from that date to another date.
So we're getting a time to act extension through the end of the year, and we're.
Do you need that in writing, or the fact that?
An email would help, but it doesn't have to be more formal than that.
Scarlett, is that going to be October 5th?
That'll be October 5th, and he has to submit for more fees for the application for preliminary and final site plan, unless it's just preliminary site, whatever he wants to do. But he has to then, as I understand it, renotice, including notification of the site plan and the associated fees with that. Is that?
Well, and all the variance relief that is determined to be by the applicant to be necessary, which are at least additional D variances and at least one D and one C, so to speak, but possibly more. And I, would 60 days be a realistic expectation to be back by then, or I know we. Would the first meeting? When's the first meeting in November, Scarlett?
The first meeting in November is can't be election day. It'll have to be the 16th of November.
11/16.
If that's.
That would be plenty of time, presumably.
Okay.
Okay. So again, to be clear, Mr. Lanford, we're carrying this. I understand that. I'm sorry. I understand that the applicant is requesting that the matter be carried with further notice to the date certain being November 16, 7:30 p.m., this municipal building. Again, with further notice, with the expectation that there'll be a additional filing for additional relief, and we will be going from there. It'll include a site plan. It'll include at least a D4 FAR variance, at least a parking deficiency variance, and possibly additional bulk variances, and possibly an additional D variance. I've neglected to mention, but perhaps the applicant should advise their position with respect to whether a density variance is required, given that I believe it would be 26 units to the acre, notwithstanding the fact that it's in a commercial zone. You may wish to advise the board what your position is as to whether or not a D variance is, D5 density variance is required, and if not, why not? Might make some sense.
Okay, I understand your position. I think it's subsumed in the D1, but I'll discuss that with my planner. And it wouldn't hurt to advertise for it anyway.
So I think we have the proper carrying of the matter. Hopefully all the members of the public understand that this matter will continue on November 16, 7:30 p.m. here. There will be a new notice, additional notice, and please stay tuned and please continue to participate. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No, that's it. You took all my thunder. We'll see you back here in November, 7:30. It'll be posted on the website. The documents will be on the website. And, thank you for everyone coming out and for tuning in via the internet.
And thank you for your time and for your input, and we'll try to get things back to you as quickly as we can.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Yep. All right, we're going to go into closed session for a quick discussion on Sky Manor. And I think, Steve, the best way may be just to hop in the room.
The way we used to.
Yeah, let's go old school. We're going to go into the room. If you go out in the hall. Yeah. And Mr. Roble, we'll see you at our next meeting. Yes, thank you for joining us.
We do formally, though, have to make the motion second and roll call vote to go into executive session for the purposes of pending litigation, the Sky Manor litigation as referenced on the agenda.
That was Ms. Gutshaw. Can I get a second?
There's no reason to stay here. We can't just.
You can stay here.
We can almost stay here.
Stay here.
John, you know it's John.
Yeah. John's on our team.
He's with us.
All right, yeah, let's stay. Yeah. So we had a motion. John, you were second?
I guess.
All right, great.
Sounds like it.
Suzanne, a quick roll call to go into closed session.
Chairman, Mr. Foos?
Yes.
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 Can't hear you.
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes.
All right, we are in. Mr. Fresca, thank you. Suzanne, a roll call to come out of closed session, please. Yes.
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 Thank you. All right, Scarlett, our next hearing.
The next meeting is on the 17th. We had a cancellation for the Gateway, which was a medical building on Route 22. That they're going to tear down most of the building and then put up a 3-story building. They wanted to take more time, so they asked for a transfer to a different month. And then the Lumark is a sign. That's the sign. I mentioned that. We got a note from them saying we're finally getting an attorney, because apparently they didn't notice correctly the last time. It's hard for people who've never done it before. So I don't know what to say. They might get an attorney and the attorney will say, 4 days isn't enough for me. So I will have to let you know. After that, one case, it's the Elliott case. It's a 2-lot subdivision case with a lot of interesting twists to it. So, and then Gateway would be later in the month. So I think the 17th is coming on, but it might be carried.
All right, very good.
And I'm sorry, did you say the 8th, was Elliott also possible for the 17th, or is that
No.
later? That's
Elliott will be
right?
all by itself on the 7th of September.
That's what I thought. Okay, good. And Lou Mark, and then the first one is definitely off. I lost the name that you mentioned.
Yes, Gateway is now
Gateway,
rescheduled for the 21st of September. And Lumark, we'll have to just see if they're going to be on or not.
Got it.
Can I ask you a question about the Lumark? So that's a manufacturer, that's a sign company. Are they coming on behalf of their client?
They're technically the applicants. I believe it's on Old York Road or something. Yes, they are the applicants, and they've never done it before, so they sort of messed up on the notice, and now they're getting an attorney.
Maybe once I know who that attorney is, maybe I could connect with that attorney just to make sure that that we know what,
To my
because the
knowledge,
fact of the sign, it's not unheard of, but, certainly you want to make sure it's standing, but with the consent of the owner, I guess they can pursue it.
Yeah, because that's a sign company.
Yeah. But they do, all the time get solar companies coming in on, with the consent of the homeowner applicant making the application. So as long as there's consent is sufficient, by somebody with a sufficient ownership or possessory interest, then they have standing. Well, that's what I'm only reporting what the judges tell us.
All right, so August 17th, we have tentatively, I guess we have booked our next meeting, which may or may not happen. We're going to hear word, and with that said, they get a motion to adjourn. All right, Mr. Winelli, thank you. See everyone August 17th.
Maybe.
Take care,
Maybe.
be well, everyone.
I go to the game last night, and the Yankees looked like garbage, now they're beating the hell out of the Orioles.
Oh, they're